In this fourth module, our focus turns to prevention, planning for things that we adults can do in the school to minimize failures and maximize success. While teaching is a major piece of this prevention, the focus of this module is on planning for instruction and developing arrangements to facilitate behavior. The focus here is to develop strategies that provide the best mix of logic, we believe it would work, and reality, we can consistently do this. In general, there are two broad categories of prevention: things we ask the students to do, which we call rules or expectations, and things we do to increase the probability of student success with those strategies. These include both routines and physical arrangements in the environment. Starting with rules, we first consider what we know about predicting problems by time, location, incident, and student. The first question the stakeholders must ask is, what do successful students do in this predictable location, at these predictable times, and under these predictable conditions? This will help to define a baseline for discussion of what all believe to be the most appropriate behaviors as rules for success.
Well, I know with our PBIS team, it's crucial to have our staff have a voice. And so we had a staff meeting and we had everyone fill out posters and everyone contributed, because our big idea was, okay, our PBIS team can sit down and come up with all of these beautiful ideas. Are they going to respond to it? And what it came down to is everyone has to be involved in the process. Everyone has to have a say, and that way everyone will participate and be on board.
Well, having common expectations too allowed us to make the praise more specific too. So then, because everybody was on the same page and there were those common expectations, then it was kind of expected of the adults in the building that if a child was going by exhibiting one of those, but it allowed us to be very specific about, you know, I love how you are helping your friend do this, like that is being respectful. And so it allowed us to kind of use that language and take praise and be able to be really specific on that.
The most effective rules are brief, 3 to 5 in number, and stated positively, indicating what students should do rather than what they should not do. In addition, we must be certain that all rules can be taught and observed, and that they are clear enough to be enforceable and encouraged through reminders. Finally, while posting rules is not a substitute for instruction, it is a nice way of providing one type of reminder.
Common areas was where we started as well, and I think once the majority of the staff saw that, wow, this works in this area, then let me try to do stuff in my classroom with guidance from the PBIS. But I think, and obviously my first year there, I think previously it was pretty bad in those common areas, so a lot of people jumped on board very quickly to, again, just start with the hallways and the posters and things like that, that, you know, that I got through my training to be the PBIS lead at the school, and just starting with some common set expectations and behaviors. This is what we are going to do in the hallway. This is how you're going to do the restroom. And once they actually saw that and felt, I think, supported from me as well as our administration.
There is another consideration for rules that is critical in facilitating the student's ability to understand and remember. This concept is called anchored instruction, and it simply means that there are some larger expectations that provide the rationale for every smaller rule. You may have seen the PBIS posters that say things like respect self, others, and property, or be respectful, responsible, and safe. These larger expectations are anchors under which all the smaller rules fit. For example, if we teach the anchor expectation of respecting oneself, that covers behaviors like being on time, staying on task, doing your best, and being prepared. It is far more likely that students will understand and remember these smaller rules when they are tied to larger anchor expectations.
Our acronym was PRIDE, and so we created a PRIDE passport, and each teacher got one, and there was a row for like cafeteria, so for all of the common areas, right? Cafeteria, hallway, stairwell, restroom, those types of things. And anytime a teacher wanted to focus on the expectations for that area, they would take, when they took their class out, they would take their PRIDE passport with them and they would just ask an admin or another teacher who was in the hallway if their students were meeting expectations to just initial it. And then when you got your passport filled, then your class got a reward.
Posters up of different, and had people go through and do a carousel and write about what expectations they would expect at this place. And we actually, to backtrack that a little bit, we had started with what are our values? What do we want to happen out of our system? What are our values in terms of setting up a matrix and setting up our expectations, and then set those up. And then we did a consensus somewhat of the same way with the hotspots, but we did that with people using dots, and so it was sort of about which one of those were that everyone liked in terms of the common expectations, and that is sort of how it rolled into then creating those common. And then once we did that, once we had the common area expectations, then PLCs worked together to move that into a classroom level of using those same ideas and moving that into the classroom and how they were going to roll that out in individual classrooms.
Like all those common expectations was we created, using Movie Maker, we created actually movies for them. And so the movies are for all the general areas, the classroom, so like the basic expectations. And so we would try to incorporate some of the more modern, latest music into that. And we would even throw a little bit of data, like last year, this, and this was, this was our tardies to class. And so we would have something about being on time or something of that nature. And the kids really liked that, and the teachers really appreciated that.
While essential for teaching, rules alone do not set students up for success. Effective teaching involves thoughtful consideration of instructional delivery and environmental arrangement. We'll discuss instructional delivery in the next module. Here, we consider routines and physical arrangements to increase the probability that students will be successful in understanding, demonstrating, remembering, and using these skills in the real world. Remember, rules are what we want the students to do, and routines and arrangements are the things we do to facilitate success within the rules. When students are unsuccessful with rules, it is a signal that adults need to change. Routines and arrangements can be thought of as an array of environmental manipulations that stakeholders can create as a means of increasing the probability of success, and teaching itself is a big part of this. For example, if we were teaching 2 + 2 by simply writing it on the board and expecting students to memorize it, would not be considered good instruction, even if the teacher clearly described the skill. A good process for determining routines and arrangements is to have all stakeholders brainstorm what they believe would effectively ensure student success with the rules for each location. After a full list of strategies has been suggested, the team should lead stakeholders back through the list with 2 questions. The first question is whether there is a consensus as to whether the strategy will be effective. Those receiving the highest votes for potential success should be kept and the others crossed off the list. Next, stakeholders are asked to order the strategies from most to least time-consuming, and all strategies ordered by what we will call practicality. The manipulation of routines involves consideration of how we might best arrange schedule order or length, the manner of which a routine happens, and the traffic patterns associated with a routine. These are all controlled by adults and must be considered as a part of the development of routines and arrangements to facilitate success with rules.
I think for some folks also making sure that when they reinforce it's authentic. I think some teachers perceive that a particular student may never achieve that, and they don't understand that there might have to be some work that has to go in beforehand in order to set that student up for success, to receive that positive reinforcement.
Well, I had suggested with our PBIS team that the holidays is a difficult time no matter where you are, what school, what classroom you're in. And so we developed a specific schedule. Every week of December, we rolled out a behavior video just to revisit. We had already introduced all of them, but we felt like this was a perfect time to revisit. So week 1, we would do bathrooms. Week 2, we would do hallway. And then when we came back from the holiday break, we rolled out the rest of them and revisited the rest of them.
Consideration of physical arrangements includes the ways we might manipulate the physical environment to set students up for success. These include decisions about adult placement, verbal and physical reminders, seating arrangements, and the number of students in one location at one time.
For us was one and it had to do with how traffic was crossing each other, long hallways, traffic crossing, and depending on whether it was bus riders. And so then we had to really look at breaking that down and making sure that that we were announcing dismissal of certain groups so that that traffic in the hallway would allow for clear paths down either to car rider or out to the buses, and that was clear so that there was not a lot of, because there was a lot of things happening during dismissal and there was not enough supervision. So dismissal was one that, as we were able to do that it helped clear out pathways, looking at timing and scheduling of how we dismissed.
We did recess. We have zones, so we have different teachers in different zones doing different, and they're always in the same zone, so they know, what it is. So each teacher has their own zone that they're in charge of for doing it, no matter what time your playtime. We actually do playtime twice in the same day. So we have a morning and an afternoon, and so we're all in different zones, but we have the same zone every time. And the teachers can rotate if they want to, but most of them don't. They like where they are, they feel comfortable with it.
There are two critically important components of the physical environment that every adult can use effectively every day. They are active supervision and proximity. Active supervision is simply a manner of actively scanning an environment and making eye contact with students. As the teacher moves about the environment, he or she should continue to move his or her head and eyes to maintain observation of all students. When working with an individual student or away from a group, adults should be positioned in such a way that eye contact with the group is as readily available as possible. While extremely simple, research is clear that active supervision has a positive impact on student behavior. Proximity is also a very simple strategy that simply involves adults moving about and occasionally approaching students, either to engage or just be near. Teachers should move about the environment in a manner that allows frequent direct contact with all students. This contact may be purely academic, with the provision of prompts, reminders, and feedback, or may be more in the form of simple attention with a pat on the back, personal question, or other manner of demonstrating interest in students. Not every possible routine or arrangement will be realistic for consistent implementation. For this reason, it is recommended that the team encourage the faculty and staff to agree to implementation of the simplest of the strategies, or the simplest combination of strategies necessary to predict success. In this manner, the school selects the best combination of logic and practicality. Ideally, stakeholders create these plans so that they have at least as many routines and arrangements, things they'll do, as they do rules for the students to do. That is, if there are 4 rules for a given location, then there should be at least 4 routine and arrangement strategies upon which the stakeholders have agreed. Before we move on to the next module to discuss instruction of the anchor expectation and rules, there are a couple of considerations. First, consider whether your school already has a set of expectations that could be used or revised to serve as anchors. Remember to keep these to no more than 5 in number. Second, consider when you might be able to get your entire faculty and staff together to engage in some of these discussions and who might facilitate.